entertainment. Instead, he became their reckoning. The drums were pounding. Dust fell from the stone ceiling. Chains clinked. Oil lamps flickered in the dim holding pens beneath the Colosseum, casting shadows across blood-stained walls. Titus Valerius sat alone, naked from the waist up, muscles like carved stone. His broad chest rose with slow, steady breaths. Scars crossed his body like war maps, marks of battles from campaigns in Germania and Britannia, and more recently, the sand. Today, Rome expected him to die. A young, trembling gladiator leaned close. They say it's lions today, 6 of them, for Nero's birthday. Titus didn't blink. Then let the pride meet its king. The gates creaked open. Sunlight cut through the darkness like a blade. The roar of 50,000 Romans exploded overhead. "Titus! Titus! The lion! The lion!" He stepped into the light, not as a man, but as a symbol, as vengeance wrapped in muscle. Just 1 year ago, Titus was a Roman centurion, a decorated war hero. He had led legions across cold rivers and broken tribes with iron discipline. But ambition breeds enemies. A treacherous senator, Lucius Varro, betrayed him during a campaign. Accused of insubordination, Titus was quietly stripped of his honors and sold to a ludus, a gladiator school, run by a sadistic lanista named Septimus. The sand became his battlefield. But instead of weeping, he adapted. Every swing of his sword was calculated. Every drop of blood a reminder. Survive until the time is right. He didn't just survive, he dominated. Men twice his size fell to him. Beasts bowed before him. Crowds screamed his name like he was a god reborn. And Nero took notice. The emperor, obsessed with blood, drama, and music, saw in Titus a living legend, an actor in his twisted theater. The Colosseum's underground corridors soon echoed with whispers. Titus, the lion, will never fall. He's not a slave, he's a storm waiting. Then came the invitation. A grand spectacle was planned for Nero's birthday. 100 gladiators, lions, elephants, and fire. The finale? Titus facing 6 lions, alone. Septimus begged him to refuse, but Titus simply replied, "I've waited long enough. If I die, it will be loud." As Rome feasted, Titus prepared. In secret, he met with others, veterans turned gladiators, slaves with memories of liberty, a mute blacksmith who still bore a legion tattoo. They whispered of rebellion, of turning Nero's theater into a war zone. Among his allies was Cassia, a former noblewoman forced into servitude after her family was purged by Nero's secret police. Her knowledge of tunnels, layouts, and the emperor's habits became crucial. As the celebration neared, Titus learned the truth. The man who sold him into slavery, Senator Lucius Varro, was not only alive, but seated next to Nero for the event. Fury boiled in Titus's chest, but he didn't let it blind him. He would not charge blindly. He would give Rome a show, then bring the empire to its knees. The celebration was grotesque. Nero, dressed in gold and playing his lyre, sat high above the arena on a velvet throne. Around him, senators, foreign kings, and Rome's elite bathed in wine, jewels, and arrogance. at the center of the Colosseum, 6 starving lions and 1 man. Titus entered shirtless, smeared in war paint made from ashes. The crowd held its breath. Even Nero leaned forward. A horn sounded. The gates opened. The lions charged. What followed was not just survival, it was slaughter. Titus moved like a phantom, rolling, stabbing, dodging, commanding. Blood sprayed the sand. 1 lion impaled, another beheaded, the last crushed under a falling bronze statue of Mars. The crowd erupted. Nero laughed. Titus raised his hands and gave the signal. All around the arena, the rebellion ignited. Gladiators disguised as performers threw off their robes and drew hidden blades. Slaves opened secret gates. Oil was set alight. Chaos exploded. Titus climbed the steps of the Colosseum like a general storming a fortress. Arrows flew, swords clashed, blood painted marble. He reached Nero's box. The emperor stood in stunned silence. Titus stared him down. "You made me a beast. Now you will feel the claws." But before he could strike, Varro stepped in, cowardly, smug, holding a dagger. Titus disarmed him with a headbutt. Then, with all Rome watching, he threw Varro into the arena where 1 wounded lion still stirred. Justice. Cassia arrived, bleeding but alive. The fires spread behind her. Nero was captured, not killed, yet. The rebellion didn't want martyrdom. They wanted fear in the heart of every senator, every patrician. That night, Rome burned again, not from madness, but from the fire of awakening. Weeks later, Rome still whispered of the day the lion roared back. Nero was eventually overthrown. The Colosseum was shut down for months, but among the people, a legend lived. There was once a man who walked into the arena to die, and walked out a king. Titus disappeared. Some say he was killed in the chaos. Others claimed he sailed to the east, leading a new legion of exiles and rebels. But many believe that in every rebellion, every roar of justice, the lion still lives.
They say it's lions today, 6 of them for Nero's birthday. Then let the pride meet its king. We are next. They will not show mercy. Fear is a cage. He was meant to die for their entertainment. Instead, he became their reckoning. The drums were pounding. Dust fell from the stone ceiling. Chains clinked. Oil lamps flickered in the dim holding pens beneath the Colosseum, casting shadows across blood-stained walls. Titus Valerius sat alone, naked from the waist up, muscles like carved stone. His broad chest rose with slow, steady breaths. Scars crossed his body like war maps, marks of battles from campaigns in Germania and Britannia, and more recently, the sand. Today, Rome expected him to die. A young, trembling gladiator leaned close. They say it's lions today, 6 of them for Nero's birthday. Titus didn't blink. Then let the pride meet its king. The gates creaked open. Sunlight cut through the darkness like a blade. The roar of 50,000 Romans exploded overhead. Titus, Titus, the lion. He stepped into the light, not as a man, but as a symbol, as vengeance wrapped in muscle. Just 1 year ago, Titus was a Roman centurion, a decorated war hero. He had led legions across cold rivers and broken tribes with iron discipline. But ambition breeds enemies. A treacherous senator, Lucius Varro, betrayed him during a campaign. Accused of insubordination, Titus was quietly stripped of his honors and sold to a ludus, a gladiator school run by a sadistic Lanista named Septimus. The sand became his battlefield, but instead of weeping, he adapted. Every swing of his sword was calculated. every drop of blood a reminder. Survive until the time is right. He didn't just survive. He dominated. Men twice his size fell to him. Beasts bowed before him. Crowds screamed his name like he was a god reborn. And Nero took notice. The emperor, obsessed with blood, drama, and music, saw in Titus a living legend, an actor in his twisted theater. The Colosseum's underground corridors soon echoed with whis. Titus the Lion will never fall. He's not a slave. He's a storm waiting. Then came the invitation. A grand spectacle was planned for Nero's birthday. 100 gladiators, lions, elephants, and fire. The finale. Titus facing 6 lions alone. Septimus begged him to refuse, but Titus simply replied, "I've waited long enough. If I die, it will be loud." As Rome feasted, Titus prepared. In secret, he met with others, veterans turned gladiators, slaves with memories of liberty, a mute blacksmith who still bore a legion tattoo. They whispered of rebellion, of turning Nero's theater into a war zone. Among his allies was Cassia, a former noblewoman forced into servitude after her family was purged by Nero's secret police. Her knowledge of tunnels, layouts, and the emperor's habits became crucial. As the celebration neared, Titus learned the truth. The man who sold him into slavery, Senator Lucius Varro, was not only alive, but seated next to Nero for the event. Fury boiled in Titus's chest, but he didn't let it blind him. He would not charge blindly. He would give Rome a show, then bring the empire to its knees. The celebration was grotesque. Nero, dressed in gold and playing his lyre, sat high above the arena on a velvet throne. Around him, senators, foreign kings, and Rome's elite bathed in wine, jewels, and arrogance. At the center of the Colosseum, 6 starving lions and 1 man. Titus entered shirtless, smeared in war paint made from ashes. The crowd held its breath. Even Nero leaned forward. A horn sounded, the gates opened, the lions charged. What followed was not just survival, it was slaughter. Titus moved like a phantom, rolling, stabbing, dodging, commanding. Blood sprayed the sand. 1 lion impaled, another beheaded. The last crushed under a falling bronze statue of Mars. The crowd erupted. Nero laughed. Titus raised his hands and gave the signal. All around the arena the rebellion ignited. Gladiators disguised as performers threw off their robes and drew hidden blades. Slaves opened secret gates. Oil was set alight. Chaos exploded. Titus climbed the steps of the Colosseum like a general storming a fortress. Arrows flew, swords clashed, blood painted marble. He reached Nero's box. The emperor stood in stunned silence. Titus stared him down. "You made me a beast. Now you will feel the claws." But before he could strike, Varro stepped in, cowardly, smug, holding a dagger. Titus disarmed him with a headbutt. Then, with all Rome watching, he threw Varro into the arena where 1 wounded lion still stirred. Justice. Cassia arrived bleeding, but alive. The fires spread behind her. Nero was captured, not killed yet. The rebellion didn't want martyrdom. They wanted fear in the heart of every senator, every patrician. That night Rome burned again, not from madness, but from the fire of awakening. Weeks later, Rome still whispered of the day the lion roared back. Nero was eventually overthrown. The Colosseum was shut down for months. But among the people a legend lived. There was once a man who walked into the arena to die and walked out, a king. Titus disappeared. Some say he was killed in the chaos. Others claimed he sailed to the east, leading a new legion of exiles and rebels. But many believe that in every rebellion, every roar of justice, the lion still lives. The sewer reeked of rot and blood. Titus Valerius crouched in the dark, his scarred chest heaving, a stolen sword heavy in his hand. Above, Rome burned. Screams and clanging steel echoed through the stone tunnels. A Praetorian's blade flashed, slicing air inches from Titus's throat. He ducked, heart pounding, and slammed the guard's head against the slimy wall. The man crumpled, his helmet splashing into the muck. "Move," Titus hissed. Cassia, sharp-eyed, clutched a tattered scroll and led the way. Marcus, the young gladiator, trembled, his dagger shaking. Gaius, grizzled and stubborn, muttered curses, dragging the mute blacksmith, whose hammer glinted faintly. They were fugitives now, rebels who'd turned Nero's Colosseum into a battlefield. The tunnel shook as a temple collapsed above, its roar swallowing Marcus's gasp. Embers drifted through cracks like fireflies, painting the gloom red. Titus pushed forward, boots splashing. "They'll crucify us if we're caught," Cassia whispered, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The scroll she held, Nero's list of traitorous senators, was their only weapon. Titus's rebellion had toppled an emperor, but Rome was a hydra. Cut one head, and another grew. Now, Praetorians hunted them, and the city choked on its own ashes. They reached a ladder. Titus climbed first, shoving open a grate. Ruined streets greeted them. Looters fought soldiers, their blades sparking in the firelight. A horse's corpse lay nearby, flies buzzing. "We should fight," Gaius growled, gripping his axe. "Hide like rats. That's not you, lion." Cassia shot back. "Fight and die. We need allies, not graves." Titus's jaw tightened. Guilt clawed him. A child's body in the Colosseum's rubble flashed in his mind, a cost of his revolt. "We didn't burn Rome to die in it," he said, voice low. "This scroll names senators who'll sell the empire for power. We take it east, rally the provinces." His words were a spark, igniting purpose. A shadow moved. Titus spun, sword raised, as a cloaked figure stepped from an alley. "You'll never reach the east alone," she said, voice smooth, accented. Aisha, a Parthian merchant, lowered her hood. Her dark eyes gleamed with secrets. "I know safe roads. Give me the scroll and I'll guide you." Gaius snarled. "A spy!" Titus studied her. "Why help us?" Aisha's smile was sharp. "Rome's enemies are my friends." Suspicion hung heavy, but Titus nodded. They had no choice. The group slipped into an abandoned stable, its roof half collapsed. Bones crunched underfoot, horses starved in the chaos. A single oil lamp flickered, casting jagged shadows. Cassia unrolled the scroll, its edges charred. "It names Senator Publius," she said. "He backed Varro's betrayal of you, Titus. Now he's plotting with eastern governors." Titus's fists clenched. Publius, another snake who'd stripped him of his legion and sold him to the arena. Revenge burned, but he forced it down. "He's one of many," Titus said. "We expose them all, or Rome rebuilds its cage." Aisha leaned closer, her scent of spice cutting through the stable's decay. "My brother's enslaved in Parthia," she said softly. "The scroll could buy his freedom." Marcus, wide-eyed, whispered, "Can we trust her?" Gaius spat. "She'll sell us out." Titus's gaze locked on Aisha. "Betray us, and you'll meet my blade." Her nod was curt, but her eyes hid something, fear or cunning. Hooves thundered outside. Titus doused the lamp. Through a cracked wall, he saw torches, mercenaries, their armor marked with Publius's crest. "They found us," Cassia breathed. Titus signaled the blacksmith, who hefted his hammer. Marcus's hands shook, but he stood ready. Gaius grinned, eager for blood. Aisha drew a curved dagger, silent. The stable door splintered as mercenaries charged. Titus moved like a storm. He parried a sword, drove his blade through a man's chest, and kicked another into a rotting beam. It cracked, dust falling like rain. Cassia stabbed a mercenary's thigh, her movements precise. Marcus froze, then slashed wildly, drawing blood. Gaius roared, his axe cleaving a helm. The blacksmith swung, crushing a skull, but a blade caught his side. He fell, silent, eyes wide. Titus shouted, "No!" Rage surged, but he grabbed Marcus, pulling him back. "Run!" They fled to the Tiber's edge, the river black under a smoky sky. The blacksmith's body lay behind, a weight on Titus's soul. Aisha pointed to a skiff hidden in reeds. "Hurry!" she urged. They piled in, Gaius cursing the loss. As they rowed, arrows hissed, one grazing Titus's arm. Blood dripped, mixing with river water. Cassia tore her sleeve, binding his wound. "We can't keep losing people," she said, voice breaking. Titus stared at the scroll, now stained with his blood. "We won't," he vowed. Publius will pay. The skiff drifted into fog, Rome's fires fading. Titus's mind churned. Nero's words haunted him. Rome eats its heroes. He'd spared the emperor to avoid martyrdom, but had he unleashed worse chaos? Galba, the new emperor, was old and weak. Publius's kind would prey on that. Titus gripped the scroll. It wasn't just revenge now, it was a fight to break Rome's cycle of tyrants. But doubt gnawed. Was he a liberator, or just another blade in the dark? Aisha's voice cut through. The Tiber leads to Ostia. Ships there can take us east. Titus nodded, but Gaius muttered, "She'll lead us to a trap." Marcus, pale, clutched his dagger, eyes on Titus for hope. Cassia whispered, "We trust you, Lion." The name felt heavy. Titus looked at the fog, the river's ripples like scars on his skin. "East," he said. "We find allies, or we die trying." A distant horn sounded. More hunters. The skiff rocked as they rowed faster, the Tiber carrying them from Rome's ashes into an uncertain dawn. Titus's wound throbbed, but his resolve hardened. Publius, the senators, the empire, they'd face the lion's claws. The skiff cut through the Tiber's fog, its ripples swallowed by the night. Titus Valerius gripped the oars, his wounded arm burning. Blood soaked Cassia's makeshift bandage, but he didn't flinch. Across from him, Cassia studied the scroll, her face lit by moonlight. Marcus, pale and shaken, clutched his dagger, eyes darting to the shadows. Gaius muttered curses, rowing hard, while Aisha scanned the riverbank, her curved blade ready. Behind them, Rome's fires glowed like a dying beast's eyes. The horn of their pursuers faded, but Titus knew the hunt wasn't over. "Ostia's close," Aisha whispered. "Ships wait there." Titus nodded, but doubt gnawed. Could he trust her? They reached Ostia's docks at dawn, the air thick with salt and fish. Broken crates littered the shore. Merchants shouted over squawking gulls. Aisha led them to a weathered ship, its captain a scarred Parthian named Cave. "He'll take us to Illyricum," she said. Gaius spat. "Another foreigner? We're walking into a trap." Titus silenced him with a look. "We need her roads. Stay sharp." Cave's grin was crooked. "Pay in gold or blood, Lion." Titus handed over a stolen Praetorian ring, Varro's from the Colosseum. Cave's eyes gleamed. Bored now. The ship creaked across the sea, waves slapping its hull. Titus stood at the bow, wind stinging his face. Cassia joined him, the scroll tucked in her cloak. "Publius is worse than Varro," she said. "He's bribing eastern governors to back a new emperor. If he wins, he'll hunt us forever." Titus's jaw tightened. A flashback hit, his old legion, cheering as he raised Rome's eagle standard. Now he was a fugitive, his honor dust. "We'll expose him," he said, "but we need an army." Cassia's eyes softened. "You're still a general, Titus." Below deck, Marcus practiced swings with his dagger, clumsy but determined. Titus knelt beside him. "Keep your wrist loose," he said, guiding the boy's arm. Marcus's face lit up, a spark of hope. "Will I fight like you, Lion?" Titus forced a smile. "Better." But his heart sank. Marcus was no soldier yet, and war loomed. Gaius watched, arms crossed. "Boy's soft. We need killers, not dreams." Titus ignored him, but the words stung. Was he leading them to freedom or death? A storm hit on the second night. Lightning cracked, rain lashed the deck. Titus tied ropes as waves tossed the ship. Aisha shouted, "Reef ahead!" Cave steered, cursing in Parthian. A crate broke free, smashing into Marcus. He screamed, pinned. Titus heaved it off, blood streaming from the boy's leg. Cassia tore her cloak, binding the wound. "Hold on, Marcus," she urged. His cries faded, eyes fluttering. Titus gripped his hand. "Stay with me, kid." The storm's roar drowned his words, a brutal reminder of their fragility. They landed in Illyricum's rocky hills, Marcus limp in Gaius's arms. The air was cold, pine-scented. Aisha led them to a hidden trail, her steps sure. Titus carried the scroll, its weight heavier than his sword. They reached a rebel camp at dusk, tucked in a valley. Tents sprawled under cliffs, lit by fire pits. Decimus, a lean former tribune, greeted them. His eyes burned with zeal, scars crisscrossing his face. "The lion himself," he said, clasping Titus's arm, "will burn Rome to the ground." His men cheered, but Titus tensed. Burn everything? That wasn't his fight. The camp buzzed with outcasts, veterans, runaway slaves, even a few deserters. Decimus offered bread and wine, but his gaze lingered on the scroll. "That list could buy us weapons," he said. "Give it to me." Titus shook his head. "It's for exposing traitors, not funding wars." Decimus's smile faded. "Rome only falls in fire, Lion." Cassia stepped in. "We need allies, not chaos." Aisha stayed silent, her eyes on the scroll. Gaius muttered, "This place reeks of betrayal." That night, Titus sat by Marcus, who slept feverishly. Cassia cleaned his wound, her hands steady but face drawn. "He's young," she said, "like my brother was." Her voice cracked, a rare glimpse of pain. Titus touched her shoulder. "I've lost men before," he said. "Good ones, I won't lose him." But doubt gnawed. A flashback showed his legion ambushed in Germania, betrayed by Varro's lies. Was he leading another doomed fight? Aisha slipped into the tent, her voice low. "Decimus sent a rider to Publius. He wants the scroll for a reward." Titus's blood ran cold. "You're sure?" Aisha nodded. "I know betrayal's stench. My brother, he works for Rome now. I need that scroll to free him." Her eyes pleaded, raw. Titus gripped his sword. "Help us and you'll get your chance." She nodded. A fragile truce formed. Drums woke them before dawn. Decimus's men surrounded the camp, blades drawn. "Give me the scroll, Lion," he shouted. Titus stepped out, sword raised. "You want it? Come take it." Decimus laughed, but his men hesitated. Titus's legend loomed. Cassia grabbed Marcus, dragging him to cover. Gaius roared, axe ready. Aisha whispered, "There's a cave behind the camp. Run!" Titus nodded, but his eyes locked on Decimus. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a test. The fight erupted. Titus moved like a phantom, cutting down two men. Gaius's axe sang, blood spraying. Cassia shielded Marcus, her dagger flashing. Aisha fought with grace, her blade a blur. But Decimus's men were many. A horn blared. Publius's mercenaries crested the hill, torches blazing. Titus's heart sank. "Cave!" he shouted. They ran, arrows hissing. Aisha led them into a narrow cave, its mouth hidden by vines. Inside, darkness swallowed them, the scroll their only light. Titus leaned against the damp stone, breath ragged. Marcus groaned, alive but weak. Gaius spat blood. "Another trap, Lion?" Cassia clutched the scroll, her eyes fierce. "We're not done." Aisha pointed deeper into the cave. "It leads to a river. Judea's beyond. Rebels there hate Rome." Titus nodded, resolve hardening. Publius's reach was long, but the lion's claws were sharp. "Judea," he said. "We build our army there." Outside, Decimus's shouts echoed. The cave trembled as mercenaries hacked at the vines. Titus gripped his sword, the scroll's secrets burning in his mind. Rome wanted him dead, but he'd make it fear the lion's roar. The cave's darkness pressed like a tomb. Titus Valerius led his group through its narrow tunnels, their breaths echoing off damp stone. Torchlight flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Cassia held the scroll tight, her face pale but fierce. Marcus limped, leaning on Gaius, his wound seeping through Cassia's bandage. Aisha scouted ahead, her steps silent, eyes sharp for traps. Behind them, Decimus's mercenaries hacked at the cave's entrance, their shouts muffled but growing louder. Titus gripped his sword, its weight steadying his racing heart. Judea lay beyond, a land of rebels who hated Rome. If they could reach it, they might turn the scroll's secrets into an army. The tunnel opened to a rushing river, its water black under a starless sky. Aisha pointed to a hidden raft. "This takes us to Judea," she said. Gaius growled. "Another of your tricks?" Aisha's eyes flashed. "I'm here, aren't I?" Titus nodded. "Move." They piled onto the raft, the current yanking them forward. Arrows whistled from the cave. Decimus's men had broken through. One grazed Marcus's shoulder. He bit back a cry. Titus shielded him, rage boiling. "Row!" he roared. The raft sped into the night, leaving their hunters cursing on the shore. Days later, Judea's dusty hills loomed. The air smelled of sand and blood, markets buzzing with traders and zealot whispers. Roman garrisons dotted the land, their banners mocking the rebellion brewing beneath. Titus's group hid in a market alley, cloaks hiding their scars. Aisha led them to a tavern, its walls stained with wine and secrets. There, Miriam, a zealot leader, waited. Her dark hair was braided tight, her eyes like knives. "The Lion of Rome," she said, voice cold. "Why should I trust a Roman?" Titus met her gaze. "Because I broke Nero's cage." He showed her the scroll. "This name's senators selling your land to Parthia." Miriam's lips twitched. "Prove your worth. Sabotage a Roman supply caravan tonight, and we'll talk." Cassia nodded. "We can do it." Gaius muttered. More blood. Marcus, pale but standing, gripped his dagger. Aisha hesitated, then spoke. "My brother. He's with the Romans here. A collaborator. I need that scroll to free him." Titus's jaw tightened. "Help us, and we'll try." Her nod was reluctant, her trust thin. Miriam's eyes narrowed. "Don't fail, Lion." The caravan rolled through a desert pass at midnight, torches glinting off Roman steel. Titus crouched on a dune, sand gritty under his hands. Cassia whispered the plan. "Cut the supply lines, burn the wagons, vanish." Gaius hefted his axe, eager. Marcus, bandaged but stubborn, clutched a torch. Aisha signaled. Guards were few, lazy. Titus moved first, a shadow among shadows. He slit a guard's throat, blood soaking the sand. Cassia tossed oil. Marcus lit it. Flames roared, wagons erupting in a blaze that lit the sky like a false dawn. Gaius hacked a centurion down, laughing. Aisha disarmed another, her blade swift. But a horn blared. Reinforcements charged from the dark. Publius's men tipped off. Titus cursed. "Ambush!" He fought like a storm, swords slashing through armor. Cassia dragged Marcus behind a burning wagon, her dagger flashing. Aisha's scream cut through. Her brother Darius stood among the Romans, his face torn between shame and duty. "Aisha, go!" he shouted, but a Roman blade struck him down. Aisha froze, her cry raw. Titus pulled her back. "He's gone!" Gaius took an arrow to the shoulder, roaring but standing. They fled, the fire's heat at their backs. They hid in a zealot safe house, a stone hut under cliffs. Marcus collapsed, feverish. Cassia cleaned his wounds, her hands shaking. "We can't lose him," she whispered. Titus's guilt surged, a flashback of his betrayed legion, men dying under his command. "We won't," he said, voice hard. Aisha sat apart, staring at her bloodied hands. "Darius chose Rome," she said. "I thought I could save him." Titus knelt beside her. "You saved us. That's enough for now." Her eyes met his, a spark of trust forming. Miriam arrived, impressed. "You burned their supplies. My people will join you." She studied the scroll. "Publius plans to crown himself emperor with Parthian gold. He's meeting their envoys in a desert fortress." Titus's blood ran hot. Publius, the snake who'd sold him to the arena. "We end him," he said. Miriam nodded. "We'll guide you." Gaius, bandaged, growled, "Good, I want his head." But Titus saw Aisha's doubt. Her brother's death changed her. Would she stay loyal? The fortress loomed under a blood-red sunset, its walls bristling with guards. Titus led the group through a dry riverbed, Miriam's zealots at their side. Inside, Publius met Parthian envoys, their voices echoing through stone halls. Titus's group split. Cassia and Marcus freed prisoners, finding Gaius among them, chained but alive. Titus and Aisha crept to the meeting chamber. Publius stood, smug, gold rings glinting. Rome will kneel to me, he boasted. Titus stepped from the shadows. Not while I breathe. The fight was chaos. Titus clashed with Publius, swords sparking. Publius sneered, "You're just a slave." Titus headbutted him, blood spraying. "I'm the lion." He drove his sword through Publius's chest, the senator collapsing like a broken statue. Parthian envoys drew blades, but Titus raised a hand. "Join us or leave. Rome's time is done." They hesitated, then fled. Aisha nodded, her loyalty sealed. Cassia and Marcus burst in, Gaius limping behind. The fortress burned as zealots set fires, its walls crumbling like Rome's pride. Outside, Miriam clasped Titus's arm. "Judea fights with you." The scroll, now complete with Publius's death, named more traitors. Titus looked to the horizon, where Rome's chaos grew. Galba was dead, whispers said, and new emperors rose. The Lions' War wasn't over. "We head east," he said. "Build something new." Aisha's eyes shone. "For my brother." Cassia smiled, Marcus stood taller, and Gaius grunted, "Let's make them bleed." The desert wind howled, carrying the lion's name. Titus gripped his sword, ready for the next fight. The sun hung low over a quiet coastal village, its rays painting the Mediterranean gold. Waves crashed softly against a rocky shore, where a weathered ship bobbed, its sails patched but strong. Titus Valerius stood on the beach, sand crunching under his boots. His scarred hands gripped a worn sword, its blade nicked from battles in Rome, Illyricum, and Judea. Salt air stung his wounds, but his eyes were steady, fixed on the horizon. Cassia stood beside him, her cloak billowing, the scroll now tucked safely in a leather pouch. Marcus, still pale but standing tall, adjusted a bandage on his arm. Aisha, her face softer since her brother's death, checked the ship's ropes. Gaius, stubborn as ever, leaned on his axe, muttering about the next fight. They were exiles, but no longer hunted. Judea's rebels had spread word of the Lion's victory, and Rome's chaos gave them time. The village hummed with life. Fishermen hauled nets, their voices mingling with gulls' cries. Children ran past, laughing, unaware of the legend among them. Titus watched them, a pang in his chest. A flashback struck, his old legion cheering as he raised their standard, now replaced by these outcasts who called him Lion. Had he traded one war for another? Cassia touched his arm, her eyes sharp but kind. "You're brooding again," she said. Titus forced a smile. "Am I a liberator, Cassia, or just another warlord?" Her answer was firm. "You gave them hope. That's enough for now." Aisha approached, her dagger sheathed. "The ship's ready," she said. "East, Parthia, maybe beyond. A new start." Her voice held grief, but also resolve. Darius's death had broken her, but fighting with Titus rebuilt her purpose. Marcus, clutching a new sword Titus had given him, piped up. "Will we come back?" His voice was stronger, the boy becoming a man. Titus ruffled his hair. "If we need to." Gaius snorted, his shoulder still bandaged from Judea. "I'm staying. These zealots need a real fighter." He grinned, a rare warmth in his eyes. "Go build your dream, Lion. I'll keep Judea bleeding Rome." A horn sounded, soft but clear. Miriam, the zealot leader, strode from the village, her braids glinting in the sun. "Our people owe you," she said, handing Titus a small iron ring, a zealot token. "You've given us fire. Use it wisely." Titus nodded, slipping the ring onto his finger. It felt heavy, like his name. The scroll, now complete with Publius's death, named more traitors, senators plotting to carve up Rome's corpse. Galba was dead, whispers said, and new emperors, Otho Vitellius, fought like dogs over scraps. Titus's rebellion had cracked the empire, but its shadow loomed. He turned to the ship. The crew, a mix of Parthian sailors and Judean exiles, shouted orders. Sails snapped in the wind, ropes creaking. Aisha climbed aboard, her eyes scanning the sea. "For my brother," she whispered, a vow to herself. Cassia followed, her steps sure. "We'll need a plan," she said, tapping the scroll. "Those senators won't fall easily." Marcus hesitated, then boarded, his sword gleaming. "I'm ready, lion," he said, voice steady. Titus lingered, sand shifting under him. Gaius clasped his arm. "Don't die out there," he grunted. "Rome's not done with you." Titus nodded, a flicker of doubt in his chest. Was he running from Rome or towards something greater? The ship pushed off, waves lapping its hull. Titus stood at the bow, the village shrinking behind them. The sun sank, painting the sky crimson like blood on Judea's sands. A gull swooped low, its cry sharp, a pattern interrupt that broke Titus's thoughts. He remembered Nero's words, "Rome eats its heroes." Had he escaped that fate, or was he sailing into another cage? Cassia joined him, her presence steadying. "You're not Nero," she said, reading his silence. "You fight for us, not glory." Titus gripped the rail, the zealot ring cold against his skin. "I hope you're right." The sea stretched endless, a blank slate. Whispers of the lion spread. Judean rebels sang of him. Parthian spies carried his name. Slaves in distant lands dreamed of his roar. Titus didn't hear them, but he felt their weight. A flashback hit, his mother, long dead, telling him as a boy, "Lead with heart, not steel." Had he? Marcus's laugh broke the moment. The boy sparring with a sailor, clumsy but fierce. Aisha smiled, a rare softness. Titus's doubt eased, not gone, but quieter. He wasn't just a blade now. He was a spark. The ship sailed into dusk, stars piercing the sky. Titus looked east, where mountains rose like promises. Parthia, or beyond, a place to build, not burn. The scroll held secrets to topple more traitors, but it was hope, not vengeance, that drove him now. Cassia stood close, her shoulder brushing his. "What's next, Lion?" she asked. He didn't answer, but his eyes burned with purpose. The wind carried their ship forward, toward a new dawn. Far off, in Rome's ruins, a slave whispered to another, "The lion lives." In Judea, Gaius sharpened his axe, zealots chanting beside him. In Parthia, rebels heard of a Roman who broke emperors. Titus Valerius sailed on, his fate unwritten. Was he a liberator, a myth, or a man running from his own shadow? The sea didn't answer. But in every rebellion, every cry for freedom, the lion's roar echoed, a fire that wouldn't die,